This is not just another entry from a ship's log. It's the last message emanating from the abyss, from the depths of the dark oceanic void that conceals the unknown and possibly the dangerous. Before you lies a yellowed page, carefully extracted from a maritime archive, like a testament to long past events, frozen in time. The manuscript, handwritten by the captain, contains an entry made in the 20th century, in the year 60, aboard an oil tanker named Esso Malmö. The date is December 26, 1966, and the location is the Atlantic Ocean, in an area where storms raged at the time, with waves sometimes reaching unprecedented heights. In those years in the 40s, in an era when sea vessels had to battle natural elements, it was there, in the open ocean, that this mysterious and alarming story occurred. The yellowed page contains a dry, protocol entry made by the captain at that anxious moment. Encountered a wave of anomalous height. The impact hit the bow. Since the bridge, located 18 meters above the water level, was completely submerged, it seems that this wave was truly destructive. However, fortunately, the damage to the vessel was minor. The course remained unchanged, and despite the blow from the elements, the ship continued its journey. But what is surprising is that the height of this wave was so great that the bridge, towering above the sea level like a 6-story building, was in the flood zone. What wave, not being a tsunami, can rise in the open ocean to such a height? And how could this happen in those years when science and physics deemed such phenomena impossible? Before we move on to a deeper analysis, I would like to make a request. Your support in the form of a like and subscription would be an important acknowledgement of our work. Thank you for your attention. This report, like hundreds of others like it, was filed in the archive, marked as something exaggerated or mistaken by the observer. After all, at that time, the scientific community was convinced that such waves were impossible. The science of the time, based on physical laws and mathematical models, asserted that a wave of such height simply could not exist. Physics, mathematics, common sense, all said the same thing. It's impossible. But what if all of this was untrue? What if the truth is hidden in the depths of the ocean, beyond our knowledge, and it is there that something lies that does not fit into the usual formulas and scientific dogmas? What if there is something ancient, primordial, monstrous, and absolutely real in the ocean, capable of creating waves of incredible height? And what if these phenomena are not just random natural cataclysms, but manifestations of forces we did not even suspect? This question is not about what exactly happened, but about why humanity refused to believe the eyewitnesses, the witnesses of those events, for so long. Why did science, with all its knowledge and methods, ignore the testimonies of sailors who encountered unknown natural phenomena? The answer to this question lies in the depths of the ocean, among the wreckage of a ship that was once considered practically unsinkable. This was a ship that embarked on its final voyage, unaware that it would encounter something impossible. It all happened on December 28, 1978, in the port of Bremerhaven, Germany. There, in the cold December mist, the air was filled with the scent of diesel fuel and salty seawater. Proudly standing at the dock was a ship, a symbol of the German merchant fleet, the container ship Munich. This was not just a ship, but a true maritime fortress, an engineering marvel of the late 20th century. It was headed to the port of Savannah, located in the state of Georgia, in the southern United States. The entire crew and everyone on board were confident that in 11 days the ship would reach its final destination, with no obstacles along the way. They were convinced of this because it was planned that way, and everything was prepared in advance for the successful completion of the voyage. However, as it turned out, this confidence was misplaced, and everything did not go as expected. The MS Munich, as the ship was called, would never enter any port, harbor, or maritime haven in the world again. It set out into the open ocean and almost immediately encountered an extraordinary storm. But this storm was not ordinary. It was something far more powerful and dangerous than typical sea storms. In November, a cyclone raged over the North Atlantic, which could be called epical, as its power exceeded all previously recorded storms. The wind reached hurricane speeds and the waves rose to a height of 15 meters, which by maritime standards is a true test for any vessel. For most ships, such conditions would mean inevitable danger, and the risk of losing control. But the Munich was specifically designed for such extreme situations. Its hull and systems were calculated to withstand the strongest storms. It confidently held its course, slicing through the giant waves like a knife through butter, continuing its path through the raging ocean. Communication with the ship owners and dispatch services was maintained regularly and in full order. Everything functioned as it should, or so everyone thought. But everything changed at 3 o'clock in the morning on December 12th. A weak, intermittent distress signal, SOS, transmitted in Morse code, unexpectedly appeared on the airwaves. This signal was picked up by the Greek ship Marion, which was nearby and accidentally heard the urgent call for help. The radio operator of the Marion could only make out fragments of the message, among which were the words SOS and the number 28, which presumably indicated the number of crew members or the number of people on board. After this signal, there was silence, a complete, oppressive silence that enveloped everything around. The giant ship, equipped with several independent communication systems, suddenly vanished from the airwaves, as if someone had erased it from radars and radio frequencies. One of the largest and most complex search and rescue operations in peacetime history began, lasting many days and involving the efforts of several countries. The Coast Guard of the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and other nations mobilized all their resources. Planes took to the skies, and hundreds of ships set out to sea. Over 100 different vessels and 16 aircraft took turns combing vast squares of the icy, raging Atlantic. Their task seemed almost impossible: to find any trace of the missing ship, its crew, or at least some wreckage. But despite all efforts, the searches led only to hopeless emptiness. Time passed, and the hope for rescue faded with each passing hour, and eventually, with a sense of despair, most specialists and rescuers acknowledged that the chances of finding survivors were practically non-existent. Then on December 14th, after 12 days of continuous, almost fruitless searching, one of the reconnaissance planes spotted a lone lifeboat in the waves. It was empty, with no signs of life, no body or life jacket. But the most alarming and truly horrifying aspect of this find was not that there was no one on the raft or signs of their presence, but how this raft ended up in the sea. The lifeboats on the Munich were secured in special niches located at a height of 20. The ship's demise occurred under the influence of harsh and relentless weather conditions, which suddenly and sharply led to the loss of its buoyancy. These conditions were so extreme that even the most prepared sailors and experienced captains were powerless in the face of the elements. The event that caused the disaster remains a mystery. It is unclear what exactly happened, what unusual phenomenon or unforeseen circumstance led to the rapid destruction of the ship. In official reports and investigations conducted after the tragedy, it was acknowledged that the circumstances remain unknown and undetermined, and the investigation reached a dead end, leading to no concrete conclusions. As a result, the case was closed, leaving behind only reflections and dark conjectures. However, in the maritime community, among sailors, captains, and workers of port taverns, this story took on another life. There, behind closed doors, in the warm hum of conversations, rumors and legends were whispered, which found no confirmation in scientific circles, but continued to live and evolve. These tales spoke of waves capable of destroying a ship like a hammer blow, of killer waves, of walls of water, sudden and monstrous in their power, which could appear out of nowhere and break even the largest and most stable supertanker. These stories, passed down orally, resembled ancient sea tales, akin to legends of krakens and sea serpents that sailors had spoken of for centuries. For hundreds of years, it was believed that such terrifying waves were merely figments of imagination, part of maritime folklore created to frighten newcomers or explain unusual occurrences. But the disappearance of the Munich ship, and especially the fact that its lifeboat was torn away, made some wonder. Could the monster truly exist? What if these monstrous waves were not just legends, but a reality hidden from the eyes of unprepared and uncomprehending scientists? To understand how revolutionary and even heretical the very idea of the existence of giant waves was, one must delve into the scientific picture of the ocean as it was in the 20th century. This science, oceanography, was based on statistics and mathematical models that described the ocean as a relatively predictable system. At that time, there was a so-called linear wave model, which considered waves as harmonic oscillations resembling sinusoids. In this model, the height of the wave crest was approximately equal to the depth of its trough, which allowed for mathematical analysis of their behavior. Waves could overlap, amplifying or weakening each other, but this process strictly adhered to the laws of normal distribution, the Gaussian curve. This meant that most waves had an average height, and large extreme ones were extremely rare. Within this model, it was mathematically predicted that a wave twice the average height of typical waves in a given area, the so-called killer wave, should appear approximately once in 300,000 waves, and a wave 3 times the average height, once in 10,000 years. These calculations established the theoretical limit of storm wave height, about 15 meters. Anything exceeding this boundary was considered impossible, unattainable under natural conditions. When sailors spoke of witnessing 30-meter walls of water, scientists merely shook their heads, explaining such accounts as stress, poor visibility, or light refraction. In their world, full of formulas and graphs, there was no room for such monsters. It was believed that the ocean was a system governed by predictable laws and that monstrous waves did not exist. However, evidence continued to accumulate, and most of it was not just tales from superstitious sailors. These were reports from captains and officers, people with impeccable reputations who backed their words with documents. In the distant 70s of the last century, in the 25th year, an event occurred on the Great Lakes that left a lasting mark on the history of natural anomalies and the mysteries of world science. In Lake Superior, one of the largest and most enigmatic bodies of water in North America, during a powerful storm, a ship disappeared without a trace, a freighter named SS Edmund Fitzgerald. At that moment, there was a full crew on board, and the last thing the captain reported was, "We are holding our own." After these words, there was an impenetrable silence, as if nature itself paused in anticipation of the next event. Subsequently, a theory emerged that the ship was overtaken by mysterious and supernatural waves known as the Three Sisters, a series of 3 anomalously high and powerful waves characteristic of the Great Lakes. Each such occurrence became a true enigma for the scientific community, as it did not fit into existing explanations. Official science attempted to find explanations for these phenomena in resonant oscillations, interactions with currents, changes in pressure, or other natural factors, but none of these explanations could fully justify the sudden disappearance of the ship. Only one thing was clear: there was a deep discrepancy with the accepted models that considered the ocean and large lakes as linear systems. However, as subsequent events showed, another, more complex picture was possible. Shortly after the disappearance of the Fitzgerald, an even more alarming event occurred: the disappearance of a modern ship called the Munich in 1978. This case became the last straw for scientists who increasingly doubted existing theories. The ship was the newest and had the highest technological equipment, and the lost rescue device, for which there were no clear explanations, became another piece of evidence that something in nature was beyond conventional understanding. There was an uproar in scientific circles, as the damage was too great to ignore what was happening. And so, at this time, when everyone began to question the possible causes of such mysterious disappearances, ideas that initially seemed incredible began to emerge. Several young oceanographer researchers, full of courage and a desire to understand the truth, began to ask uncomfortable questions. They suggested that the ocean is not just a linear, predictable, and calm environment, but a complex nonlinear system where extreme events previously considered impossible could occur. According to their hypothesis, in such systems, as known from physics, catastrophic energy explosions are possible when waves not only add up but interact in such a way that they begin to steal energy from each other. As a result of this interaction, a colossal amount of energy is concentrated in one monstrous surge, capable of destroying everything around it. This idea sparked a storm of criticism and resistance, as it required a revision of the entire knowledge base about the ocean. However, to confirm the theory, irrefutable evidence was needed, evidence that could be recorded on scientific instruments, and even better, obtaining a photograph of this mysterious monster or giant wave. And this photograph appeared 17 years later, on one of the days of the 20th century, December 27, 1995. On the first day of the new year, January 1st, 1995, in the cold waters of the North Sea, located off the coast of Norway, an event occurred that forever entered the annals of scientific history. This sea is one of the harshest and most inhospitable places on the planet, where storms are particularly powerful and dangerous. It was here, at the Draupner gas field, that the well-known oil platform, named after the same name, stands. This enormous structure, embedded in the seabed, is designed to survive in the harshest conditions, with winds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour and waves reaching. It was the long-awaited and eagerly anticipated smoking gun, ominously approaching, that everyone interested in maritime mysteries had talked about. No longer could one hide behind sailors' exaggerations, their legends, or outdated models created to justify the ocean's unpredictability. It was time to acknowledge the truth. The wave, later dubbed the Draupner, became the first instrumentally recorded instance of the so-called rogue waves. This precedent confirmed that such terrifying waves do indeed exist, and that they can occur even in areas remote from powerful currents and dangerous sea streams, in deep water, where internal processes within the wave field can create destructive phenomena. This discovery became a true turning point in the study of the ocean, a watershed moment that forced physicists and oceanographers to completely rethink their views and approaches to understanding sea waves. It became clear that the linear models previously widely used to describe most wave processes were deeply flawed, especially when it came to extreme events. The entire scientific community began feverishly searching for new, more accurate models capable of explaining the phenomenon of such destructive waves. Researchers turned to equations previously applied in fields such as quantum mechanics and optics, for example, the nonlinear Schrödinger equation. In the course of their work, scientists discovered an astonishing and very important effect known as modulation instability, or, as it is also called, Benjamin Fair instability. Simply put, this is a process in which a uniform wave flow suddenly begins to break into separate parts, and the energy transferred from neighboring waves concentrates in one central wave, which, rapidly growing and becoming more powerful, turns into a short but incredibly high and destructive gorilla, a monster of the ocean depths. One can imagine, in a crowd of people walking in step, how suddenly one person starts jumping higher and higher, taking energy from those around and becoming the center of attention, a source of chaos and destruction. It was this wave, named Draupner, that opened Pandora's box for scientific research. Scientists began to re-examine old data collected from buoys and satellites and discovered traces of similar rogue waves all over the ocean. The European Space Agency launched a large-scale project called MaxWave, aimed at studying satellite images of the ocean over a 3-week period. The analysis revealed more than 10 waves over 25 meters high, significantly exceeding norms and standards. It became evident that such events occur much more frequently than previously thought, and across the entire planet, once every 10,000 years to be more precise. They are not rare, but a constant phenomenon manifesting in all the world's oceans. This new, frightening picture of the world sparked unprecedented interest and, simultaneously, concern among specialists and researchers. Many mysteries that had long remained unexplained began to find their answers. A particularly vivid example was the mystery of the MS Munich disaster. With new knowledge of the nonlinear physics of waves and traces of their occurrence, investigators and maritime experts were able to look at the tragedy from a completely different perspective. Suddenly, all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Let's recall the key clues. First, the sudden and complete disappearance of communication with the ship. Second, the absence of any reasonable or logical messages about the nature of the distress. Third, the lifeboat torn from its moorings, found at a height of about 20 meters, as if thrown by the sea's fury. Fourth, the relatively small amount of debris found, which contradicted the classical theory of a collision with a large wave. Now imagine a hypothetical scenario. When a ship suddenly encounters a powerful wave, its bow plunges into the trough of the crest, as if drawing upon itself the full force of a natural cataclysm. At this moment, when the wave reaches its peak, the ship's bow rises into the air, as if soaring upwards, and a significant void forms in the central part of the hull, as if someone had carved it out of metal. This sensation, as if the giant ship is momentarily supported on 2 points, on the crests of neighboring waves, adds a sinister drama to the scene. Its own mass, the colossal weight of the cargo, and the structural features of the hull begin to work against it under such conditions. The metal, designed for certain loads, cannot withstand such force and bends under pressure. The result is a terrible and sudden rupture. The hull breaks in half with a deafening crack, as if a giant matchbox had split at the seams. This moment of catastrophe is accompanied by a powerful blow when the giant wave crest covers the bridge, like a massive hand of a destructive force. The shock wave, shaking everything around, shatters the windows of navigation and communication systems, destroys sensitive instruments, and most likely instantly takes the lives of everyone on watch. As a result of this sudden destruction, communication with the ship disappears, and the explanation for why the lifeboats remain undiscovered and why no distress signal is sent becomes clear. This powerful blow from above, the blow that struck the vessel, is the mystery that explains the disappearance of the MS München. It was the reason the ship was so quickly and irrevocably destroyed. The wave that swept across its deck at a height of 25 meters, easily sweeping away everything in its path, including the very lifeboat. Torn from its steel fastenings and seized by the power of nature, it was destroyed and carried away by the wave. The ship, breaking into 2 parts, began to sink in literally a matter of minutes, leaving the crew no chance to launch lifeboats or send any meaningful distress signal. The catastrophe happened so suddenly and completely that the people had no chance of survival. It was an event that could not be prevented. Its scale was colossal and irreversible. Today, more than 20 years later, this version, which not long ago would have seemed fantastic and far from reality, has become recognized and most logical in scientific circles. It fully explains all the mysterious aspects of the MS München case, turning the disappearance of the vessel from a mysterious and unsolved incident into a tragic but quite understandable story about the power and dangers of the ocean. The monster that sank the München was finally identified, and its name is nonlinear fluid dynamics, that mysterious and powerful force of nature capable of destroying even the strongest structures. We have uncovered the mystery of the MS München, and this has become an important step in understanding the power of marine elements. But despite this discovery, the story does not end here. It is only beginning, because now we fully realize monsters are real. They are not confined to the North Atlantic alone. They exist all over the world, and the hunt for them continues. For example, the coast of South Africa has long acquired a notorious reputation. Its sailors have called this place a ship graveyard for centuries. Here, the waters of 2 vast oceans, the Atlantic and the Indian, meet, and the powerful Agulhas current, flowing against the prevailing westerly winds, creates special conditions for the emergence of dangerous waves. These waves, akin to killers, can suddenly open up the ocean and engulf a vessel whole. Sailors who have had the misfortune to encounter this speak not of water walls, but of holes, giant funnels tearing the ocean's surface. Suddenly, a giant depression opens up in front of the vessel, followed by an even larger one. Fortunately, tragedies and human casualties were avoided, and this became a true salvation for those who found themselves in the epicenter of this natural incident. However, this case vividly demonstrated how vulnerable even the most modern and technologically advanced ships, built to the latest safety standards, are. It reminded us that even such monsters of the sea, seemingly invincible in their power, are not immune to unexpected and sometimes inexplicable manifestations of nature's force. Occasionally, these giants, usually gliding across the water's surface, stray from their usual routes and end up on land. In the 21st century, in the year 1991, on Daytona Beach in Florida, on a clear and calm day, without a cloud in the sky and no wind, an event occurred that still raises many questions among scientists. There, in absolutely cloudless weather, A massive 6-meter-high wall of water suddenly crashed down, stretching about 43 kilometers. This giant wave swept away 100 cars, leaving destruction and chaos in its wake, and injured 75 people caught in its epicenter. Surprisingly, scientists still cannot provide a precise explanation for the origin of this natural phenomenon. It was not a tsunami, as no recorded earthquakes preceded its appearance. Perhaps the cause was a complex and unusual harmony of ocean swells whose resonance intensified over long distances, creating a powerful wave. But there is no definitive answer yet, and the mystery of this event remains unsolved. Today's challenge for scientists is not just to confirm the existence of such killer waves, but to learn how to predict their occurrence. Predicting such phenomena is an extremely complex and difficult task, as a rogue wave is a local, short-lived, and very dynamic event. It usually forms in a matter of seconds, about 10 to 15, and disappears just as quickly. Modern monitoring systems, such as WFW Watch 3, can only indicate areas of the ocean where the likelihood of such waves is higher. They provide a general picture, marking potential risk zones, but they are not yet capable of providing an accurate and timely forecast for a specific vessel to warn the captain of impending danger. New radar technologies are being developed that could scan the ocean's surface around a vessel, and by analyzing the wave field, predict the appearance of these monsters several minutes before they occur. This amount of time would be sufficient for the captain to change course, reduce speed, or take other measures to face the wave head-on, significantly increasing the chances of survival for the crew and the ship. It is a true race against time, a struggle between human intelligence and the primal chaos of the ocean, which continues to remain a mystery. The story of the ship Munich and its encounter with rogue waves is not just a maritime drama. It is a powerful metaphor about human knowledge. It shows how even the most well-structured and carefully developed scientific theories can crumble when faced with harsh reality. This story teaches us to listen to those who were on the scene, those who have seen and felt the power of nature in its most dangerous manifestations. It is their testimonies that help us understand the true nature of these phenomena, which often appear beyond our comprehension. It serves as a reminder that there are forces in nature that still surpass our knowledge and technology, and of the necessity to maintain respect for its power. In these reflections, final questions remain that demand answers. If science was mistaken for an entire century in its understanding of the ocean, in what else might it be mistaken today? What secrets of the ocean depths, which we consider myths or fabrications, might in reality be more brutal and terrifying than we imagine? How many more ships like the Munich must disappear into the bottomless depths?